Emily Carter was 14, the first time her father asked her to sign something she didn't understand. "Just school paperwork," he said casually, sliding a stack of papers across the kitchen table while the television hummed in the background. "You know how annoying these forms are." Emily trusted him completely. Back then, her father still kissed her forehead before work, and her mother still called her our miracle child. Whenever relatives visited, their small Ohio house always smelled like coffee and cigarette smoke, and even though money was tight, Emily believed her family was normal. She signed where he pointed. Her mother barely looked up from clipping grocery coupons. "Make sure your signature matches," she muttered. "Banks are picky," Emily frowned. "Why would school papers need my signature?" Her father laughed loudly. "Look at you asking grown-up questions now." The room joined in with nervous laughter, and Emily forced herself to smile too. She wanted badly to feel older, smarter, included. So she ignored the strange feeling in her stomach and kept signing. That moment would follow her for the next 9 years. As Emily grew older, the paperwork never stopped. Sometimes it was insurance forms. Sometimes it was tax documents. Other times her parents asked for her social security card because they needed it for records. Whenever she hesitated, her mother knew exactly which buttons to push. "After everything we sacrifice for you," she would sigh dramatically, "you can't even help with simple paperwork." So Emily stayed quiet. By 16, she was working weekends at a diner to help pay electric bills. Her classmates talked about prom dresses and road trips, but Emily spent her tips buying groceries and gas. Her parents constantly reminded her how hard life was. "We're surviving because we stick together," her father often said. Emily believed him. When college acceptance letters arrived, Emily cried after opening one from a university in Chicago. She had earned a partial scholarship for journalism. For one beautiful night, she imagined escaping her tiny town and building a different future. Her mother destroyed that dream by morning. "We can't survive without your income," she said coldly over breakfast. "Your father's business is struggling again." Emily stared at the acceptance letter while her father avoided eye contact. "You want us homeless," her mother whispered, so Emily declined the scholarship. At 23, she finally decided she wanted something for herself. A tiny apartment downtown, nothing fancy, just one bedroom, peeling paint, and enough distance from her parents to breathe again. The leasing manager seemed cheerful until she ran the credit check. Then her expression changed completely. "There has to be a mistake," the woman said carefully. Emily's stomach tightened. "What kind of mistake?" The woman turned the computer screen slightly away. "Miss Carter, your credit report is severely delinquent." Emily laughed nervously. "That's impossible. I only have one debit card." The manager hesitated before speaking again. "There are 11 credit cards under your name, 2 business loans, auto debt, collection accounts." She paused softly. "The total debt appears to be around $340,000. Emily felt the room spin. "No," she whispered. Her hands shook as the woman printed the report. Every page felt heavier than the last. Accounts opened when she was 14, 15, 16. Her vision blurred. When she drove home, rain slammed against the windshield so hard she could barely see the road. Her chest burned with panic and confusion. The moment she walked into the house, her father looked up from his recliner. "What's wrong with you?" Emily threw the papers onto the coffee table. "What is this?" Her mother picked up the report, and for one brief second, Emily saw fear in her eyes. Then it disappeared. Her father leaned back slowly. "So," he sighed, "you finally found out." Emily stared at him in disbelief. "Found out what?" "That families help each other," her mother snapped. "We did what we had to do. You put debt under my name when I was a child." Her father actually laughed. "We fed you, clothed you, kept a roof over your head," he said. "You owe us." Emily barely slept after confronting her parents. She spent the night sitting inside her car outside a 24-hour grocery store, rereading the credit report until sunrise. Every account felt unreal. Credit cards from states she had never visited. Business loans connected to companies she had never heard of. Utility bills dating back nearly a decade. The worst part was the dates. Some accounts had been opened when she was only 14 years old. By morning, her anger had replaced the shock. Emily drove straight to the local police station, carrying a folder stuffed with printed reports and old family documents she had secretly taken from the house before leaving. Her hands trembled as she explained everything to the desk officer. The officer's expression slowly darkened. "You're saying your parents used your identity for years?" Emily nodded weakly. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." After taking her statement, the officer directed her to a financial crimes detective named Marcus Hale. Unlike the others, Detective Hale didn't look surprised. He looked concerned. "This kind of fraud happens more than people realize," he said quietly. "Especially inside families." Emily swallowed hard. "Can they really do this to me? They already did." That sentence stayed in her head long after she left the station. Over the next week, Emily began digging through old memories with terrifying new clarity. Suddenly, moments from her childhood made sense. Her father demanding she practice signatures for school forms. Her mother refusing to let her open her own mail. Random phone calls where adults asked for MS, Carter, before hanging up abruptly. They had trained her not to ask questions. One rainy afternoon, Emily met her younger brother Noah at a diner near his school. At 17, Noah looked exhausted in the same way Emily once had. He nervously stirred his milkshake before speaking. "I heard them talking about you once," he admitted. Emily looked up sharply. "Talking how?" And Noah lowered his voice. "Dad said your credit was clean gold. Mom laughed and said you'd never figure it out because you trusted them too much." Emily felt physically sick. Noah reached into his backpack and slid over a small envelope. "I stole these from Dad's office." Inside were photocopies of loan applications carrying Emily's forged signature. There were tax records, fake business registrations, and credit approvals tied to multiple states. One paper made her blood freeze. A loan for $92,000 had been approved 3 days after her 15th birthday. That evening, Detective Hale called her with an update. "Emily, this case may be larger than identity theft." "What do you mean?" "We found evidence of interstate fraud and falsified tax filings. Some accounts crossed state lines." He paused carefully. "Federal agencies may get involved." Emily leaned against her apartment wall, suddenly dizzy. "Federal agencies. The FBI handles large financial fraud cases." For a moment, the room fell silent except for her breathing. These weren't desperate parents making small mistakes. This was organized. 2 days later, Emily sat inside a federal office building, answering questions from investigators for nearly 4 hours. They asked about fake businesses, signatures, tax records, and hidden accounts. Every answer made her feel like her childhood had been one long setup. When the interview ended, a female agent stopped her near the elevator. "You did the right thing," the agent said gently. Emily forced a weak smile. "Doesn't feel like it." Outside the building, her phone exploded with messages from relatives. "How could you report your own parents? Your mother is devastated. Families handle problems privately." Then came the voicemail from her father. His voice sounded calm, too calm. "You're embarrassing this family," he said. "Call off the investigation before things get worse." Emily replayed the message 3 times. For the first time in her life, she heard the threat hidden beneath his words. That night, while sitting alone in her tiny apartment surrounded by paperwork, Emily finally broke down crying. Not because of the debt, because she realized her parents had never seen her as a daughter, only as something they could use. The FBI moved quietly at first. Emily only noticed the change when Detective Hale stopped answering her calls directly, and instead routed everything through a federal case officer named Special Agent Lauren Mitchell. The tone of every conversation shifted from uncertainty to controlled urgency. "We've confirmed multiple fraud channels," Agent Mitchell said during a meeting. "This is not a single incident, it's a long-term operation." Emily's hands went cold. "Operation?" The agent nodded. "Your parents appear to have used your identity as a financial anchor for years." Piece by piece, the truth unfolded. Emily sat through endless document reviews, each one more devastating than the last. Fake business filings registered in her name. loan applications submitted across state lines, tax returns that showed income she had never earned. Even a shell charity account was traced back to her identity. Every file felt like another version of her life she had never lived. Then came the breaking point. A federal analyst showed her a timeline. It wasn't just fraud, it was systematic planning. Every year since she was 14, new accounts had been opened strategically to build credit history. When one account became risky, another was created to balance it. Her identity had been turned into a financial machine. Emily whispered, "They built a system out of me." The analyst didn't deny it. Meanwhile, her parents escalated. Her mother began calling relatives, crying loudly on speakerphone, saying Emily had been brainwashed by outsiders. Her father sent emails to family friends accusing Emily of mental instability. The narrative was clear. If they couldn't control her, they would destroy her credibility. One evening, Emily found Noah waiting outside her apartment. His face was pale. "They're saying you stole money from them," he said. Emily let out a hollow laugh. "Of course they are." Noah hesitated. "I don't believe them anymore." That was the first time Emily felt something like hope in weeks. The turning point came unexpectedly. A federal subpoena forced access to hidden bank accounts linked to offshore transfers. Millions had flowed through accounts Emily had never known existed. Her identity was only one layer of a much larger structure involving fake businesses and tax evasion. Agent Mitchell closed the file slowly. "This is beyond family fraud," she said. "This is organized financial crime." Emily felt sick. Her parents hadn't just ruined her life. They had been running something far bigger than she ever imagined. Then came the confrontation attempt. Her father showed up outside her apartment one night. No warning. No call. He stood under the streetlight like nothing had changed. "Emily," he said calmly, "you're making a mistake." She didn't move. "You don't understand what you're doing," he continued. "This will ruin us." Emily's voice shook but stayed firm. "You already ruined me when I was 14. His expression hardened. "We gave you everything." "No," she replied quietly. "You used me." For a moment, silence hung between them. Then his tone shifted colder. "You think the government will protect you," he said. "We are your family." Emily stepped back. "Not anymore." He stared at her for a long time before turning away without another word. 2 days later, federal agents executed search warrants. Emily didn't see the raid itself, but she saw the aftermath. Boxes being carried out, computers sealed, documents labeled and tagged, neighbors watching from windows, whispering as the truth became impossible to hide. Agent Mitchell called her afterward. They resisted questioning. She said, "But it doesn't matter anymore. We have enough evidence." Emily sat on her apartment floor, exhausted beyond tears. For years, she had lived inside a lie she didn't know existed. Now, that lie was collapsing piece by piece. And for the first time since she was 14, Emily wasn't afraid of what came next. The courtroom felt colder than Emily expected. She had imagined anger, maybe even panic, when she finally saw her parents in federal custody. Instead, there was only a strange stillness, like her emotions had burned out after years of pressure. Her father avoided looking at her. Her mother, however, watched Emily constantly, as if staring hard enough could reverse everything. The trial moved quickly once the evidence was presented. Financial records, forged signatures, federal tax violations, hidden accounts, witness testimony from agents and analysts who had spent months rebuilding the truth of Emily's stolen identity. Each piece landed like a final nail sealing a coffin. When Emily was asked to testify, she walked to the stand slowly. Her hands were steady now, not because she wasn't afraid, but because fear no longer controlled her. The prosecutor asked her to explain how it started. Emily paused before speaking. "I was 14, she said softly. "They told me it was school paperwork." Her voice didn't break, not once. She described the years of confusion, the constant pressure, the guilt they used to silence her. She explained how she worked through school, believing she was helping her family survive, while her identity was being drained in the background. When she finished, the room stayed silent for several seconds. Even the judge looked down at the papers instead of speaking immediately. The verdict came days later. Guilty. Multiple counts of identity, theft, fraud, and financial crimes. Federal sentencing followed soon after. Emily didn't smile when it was read. She didn't cry either. It felt too distant, like justice belonged to someone else's story. What mattered more was what came after. With the investigation complete, most of the fraudulent debt tied to Emily's name was legally discharged. Her credit report, once a map of destruction, slowly began to clear. Accounts were removed, flags lifted. Her financial identity was rebuilt line by line. For the first time in her adult life, Emily was no longer tied to $340 of lies. Freedom didn't feel dramatic. It felt quiet. She moved into a small apartment across town, sunlight through thin curtains, a second-hand couch, a kitchen that didn't belong to anyone but her. No shouting, no manipulation, no hidden papers waiting to destroy her future, just silence and healing. One afternoon, Emily received a letter in prison correspondence. Her mother wrote that everything was a misunderstanding, that Emily had destroyed the family, and that forgiveness should come naturally. Emily read it once, then she folded it carefully. She didn't reply. Instead, she threw it into a metal fire pit outside her building that evening. The paper curled, blackened, and disappeared into ash. There was no dramatic satisfaction in watching it burn, only closure. A few days later, Noah came to visit her. He looked different now, lighter, like he had stepped out of the same shadow but wasn't fully sure how to live in sunlight yet. "I'm sorry I didn't stop it sooner," he said. Emily shook her head. "You didn't need to." They sat in silence for a while. Then he asked quietly, "What happens now?" Emily looked around her small apartment, thinking for a moment. "I start over," she said simply, and she did. She found work helping victims of financial abuse, sitting across from people who thought their situations were hopeless and showing them they weren't alone. Every case reminded her of herself at 14, confused, trusting, unaware, but now she knew how to fight back. Months later, Emily met Daniel again, the friend who had stood beside her during the worst of it. He smiled when he saw her, like he had been waiting for this version of her all along. "You look like yourself," he said. Emily smiled faintly. "I think I finally am." That night, she stood outside her apartment, looking at a city that once felt overwhelming. Her parents had tried to erase her identity. Instead, they revealed it. Emily Carter was no longer the child they controlled. She was the woman who called the FBI and rebuilt her life from the ashes they left behind.